Who do you think's made the biggest impact at Arsenal? Saliba or Gabriel Jesus? Who do you think between the two, if you had to pick, has had that real impact that's really changed the mentality and dynamic of Arsenal that we've seen this season so far?
Well, I was worried listening to Joel that I would be about to hear sort of the first set of sentences from an Arsenal fan that didn't rave about William Saliba. I was getting worried when he was sort of 30 seconds through. I was like, is he actually going to mention Saliba? But I think in the end, if you kind of say what has taken this team on to another level, that means they are top of the Premier League. It does kind of come down to Jesus, as Joel said. You couldn't really fault Alexandre Lacazette's effort last season, but for so many reasons, he'd just become a striker that didn't really do the kicking the ball in the net stuff. He couldn't run in behind. He worked very hard to bring the best out of the players around him, but he kind of just did that. And I think Jesus does an awful lot of that and scores and takes a lot of shots. And in a way, like Arsenal haven't had to change that much how they play. They've just hugely upgraded at that centre forward slot. I thought it didn't get maybe the hype it merited because there were a lot of other things going on after that Bournemouth game, including a debut for the youngest Premier League, the youngest player ever in the Premier League. But Gabriel Jesus' header for Arsenal's goal off the Granit Xhaka assist was just some really magnificent football. And, that's a side as well that Arsenal haven't had in a striker since, even before Van Persie, someone that can do a bit of everything, can win the balls in the air, can score, can interlink, and brings out so much of Gabriel Martinelli as well. And he's become a leader on that team day one. I remember after that Brentford game, I was down in the mix zone in the tunnel after the game, and he was one of those players that went up and spoke for the press, which is, Nigel, and Ian. That's what the leaders in the team do. Whatever the result, they're the ones that come out and speak and set the tone. And Jesus is that as well as a top striker. He's been a great signing for Arsenal.
Now, Joel, my question to you is, obviously Jesus didn't make the Brazil squad, a very talented Brazil squad, very competitive, and we're all very impressed with what we saw from Brazil in the preparation for the World Cup. Do you think him not making the squad now is going to be a huge benefit to Arsenal?
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a supporter of Arsenal Football Club, not Brazil. Anything that's going to work in my favour, I'm going to take. And it's going to give him the burn and the urgent desire to play. He's going to be looking at Richarlison, who's ahead of him, Vinicius Junior, who's ahead of him, Neymar, who's ahead of him, Anthony, who's ahead of him. He's going to go back and say, okay, look, I've got like 8 weeks, right, to get myself ready. Probably 6 if you're looking at the announcement of the official squads. And he's going to be giving it his all. And let's be honest with you, we're going to need to rack up as much points as possible, because after the World Cup, I keep saying you're going to see a whole heap of funny behaviour. You're going to see players coming back, probably, bigger names, bigger profiles, bigger attitudes. So we want to make sure that we're making sure we're wrapping up as much points as possible. And I think him not going, and it's not just him that didn't go. Gabriel didn't go either, and neither did Martinelli. So that is actually going to make our team, I think, even stronger. With the unity we have, those boys are going to work extra hard in training, and we're going to make sure that we stay top of the league.
Mm-hmm. Just to dive in on Gabriel Jesus, I know that in his case, basically Chiche didn't pick him because he knows he's going to the World Cup, and they know. But I think Richarlison, having scored 2 goals and having had such success on that first friendly, that speaks to Joel's point. It's going to light a fire in his belly, because I think Richarlison will be also those 2 strikers will be fighting for the number 9 spot in that World Cup opener. But the other one that Joel mentioned, and story on that, Gabriel Martinelli. When he arrived at Arsenal, and remember, he came from state level football. This was not a player that everyone had been talking about. People who knew him were saying he's going for 2022. He has not been at Arsenal long. He joined in the summer of 2019, and everyone was talking about him as a player that would start in the under-23s. So you sort of said, oh yeah, no, that's good. It's always, it's good to dream big, isn't it? What was it David Brent said? Good to keep up the doodling. You never know. And here he is. And obviously it's going to be really tough for Martinelli. He's fighting against the likes of Neymar, Rafinha, Anthony, but he's in with a shout, and he's been playing like a player that knows if he can just get a run of form together, he can get in that 26. And so, I mean, he's the player I'm most excited to see in the Premier League over the next few weeks.
I worry for him internationally. I mean, you're saying he has a chance, and obviously as Gooners, we're going to be like, yeah, go on Martinelli. We want what's best for him, but I don't see him getting into that Brazil team, if I'm honest with you. And hopefully we benefit from that. And that's just me being honest.
Yeah, well, it's incredibly difficult to get into this Brazil squad. It's one of the most talented, if not the most talented squads that we have ever seen from Brazil heading into a World Cup. And I think what you're doing domestically for your club team is going to be so important, and especially with Arsenal flying so high, confidence flying high. I think it's a good, puts those players who are fighting to get into that squad in a really great position to do so. Obviously, a lot of internationals to deal with now going into the North London derby. Does this change anything when it comes to either Arteta or Conte choosing his starting 11? Because you have to put into consideration now, Nigel, that a lot of players have traveled a long distance. I mean, we've got a ton of players, not just 5 or 6 who are playing in South American nations. We've got Asian nations. We've got all over the world when it comes to this game. Does that come into consideration of a manager's mind that these players might not be arriving back until probably tomorrow before they then get into training ahead of a massive game, which is the early kickoff on the Saturday?
A lot of that has changed now, Ian. You'd have to say a couple of years back or years when we were playing, then yeah. But nowadays, these clubs are very well prepared. A lot of these clubs do organize private flights for some of their star players to return immediately after the game. So there's no messing around in a hotel and flying out the next day. So I think what happens is now they pay attention more to the science behind it of how much game time was played by these players, how they're feeling. They'll be conditioned straight away ready for the game. I think it's going to be very, very interesting in this encounter, North London derby, after an international break, after what these players went through emotionally for their nations that are representing. You look at the indifferent form with England and, Harry Kane getting the goal against Germany. I'm sure that's going to breed a lot of confidence and fire in his belly coming back into a North London derby. Obviously, we talked about just Jesus right now missing out in the Brazilian squad. So again, we're hoping it's a good reaction, but we've got no guarantee it's going to be a good reaction. He could still really be hurt. He could still want to be part of the Brazilian squad. No player really wants to believe they're being rested or say, oh, I want to rest. No, they want to play football. And of course, you're seeing the success of Brazil and how the camaraderie is there, the togetherness, and everyone's talking about Brazil. That still might hurt an individual. Like we're all human beings as players, and he still might want to be part of it. He might not be thinking about Arsenal, not in a disrespectful way, but still thinking about representing his national team.
Nigel, stop. You're trying to create a scenario that doesn't exist. There's no doubt that he's going to come back hungrier than ever. So please stop the notion of, he's not going to turn up because he's thinking about Brazil.
Hey, we all see it's a derby.
He knows this is the game to really put himself on the map. He didn't do so as much as what he wanted to do during the Man United match, but this is the next big game. This is where you're going to see those players, especially haven't gone, they've all banded together. I've got the inside knowledge, bro. I know what's going on. You know what I mean? So just please expect a very, very big performance. That's what I'm saying.